It's not a new idea. No strings attached payments to provide people with a financial floor, what's called a guaranteed basic income. It actually dates back to 16th century England. Today, it's being tested in dozens of pilot programs across the country, in cities as big as Baltimore and as small as Yellow Springs, Ohio, population about 3,700. Some of them use taxpayer funds, others use private contributions or foundation grants. Stockton, California was among the first to launch a pilot program in 2019. Earlier, I spoke with Stockton's mayor at the time, Michael Tubbs. He's also founder of a group called Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. I asked him about the genesis of Stockton's program.
At the crux of all the issues, from homelessness to crime to education, was this persistent poverty and economic insecurity. So in my first 100 days, I gathered my team in the office and I said, you guys, I want our legacy to be an anti-poverty, a pro-economic security administration. So let's come up with all the ideas for how can we as a government ensure that people have enough to live and survive and eventually thrive. And through that, my team came back with this idea of a guaranteed income, citing work that was happening in places like Kenya and in Mexico and in Brazil. And I had heard of guaranteed income from studying Dr. King in college, so I was familiar with the idea. So I said, well, let's do it.
And as I understand it, the program ran for 2 years. You had 125 participants from neighborhoods where the median income was at or below the city's median, which I think was about $46,000. They got $500 a month for 2 years. What did you find?
So many people said the money would be spent on drugs and alcohol, or that people would stop working, or that people would use that money to commit crimes, etc. And what we saw was that people spend money the way you and I and the viewers spend money. We saw them be 2 times less likely to be unemployed. We saw them spend the money on things like utilities, on necessities, on food, and on their children. But we also saw health impacts. We saw those with a guaranteed income saw their stress decrease. Just a small amount of money was enough, not for people to become millionaires, but for people not to be evicted, for people to take care of their children, for people to be able to pay to get their car fixed, for people to live and contribute to their communities.
So everything you just said, it sort of contradicts or counters what the critics say, because the critics say that this takes away the incentive to work, that this will foster bad spending decisions. But it sounds like that's not what you found in Stockton.
That's not what we found in Stockton, and increasingly from any of the dozens of pilots happening across this country and this world consistently, which suggests to me, John, that part of the issue is not just a data issue, but a storytelling issue, that we have to get people to see the myths, the lies, the prejudices, the stereotypes, and the biases we have against people who may have less money.
And what happened when the program ended? I mean, these people in the pilot program had this income floor. What happened when that was taken away?
Well, what we saw happen after it was taken away was people were able to use this money and do things to set them up to be better off than where they started. So what I mean is several people went from part-time to full-time work. So although they're not receiving the guaranteed income, they're receiving the income that comes with a better paying job with benefits. Or some people use the money to save up to pay for the deposit necessary for rent in a better apartment. Or some people paid off credit card debts. And so folks were able to use the money to pay off the little things that were holding them back. So now they're in a much better position than they were a couple years ago before they were part of the program.
Do you see guaranteed income programs supplementing government assistance programs or replacing government assistance programs?
I see it as a supplemental. I see it really as an extension of the social safety net. I see it as our 21st century Social Security. And when in the Great Depression, we decided that folks who are older deserve to have a little bit of cushion post 65 because they've done so much for our communities. And I also think our current government programs should take note about what makes guaranteed income works. Because A, it's the money, but B, it's also the trust. That maybe people don't need to do a bunch of paperwork. Maybe folks don't need someone to sit down and make them come in and set goals. Maybe a lot of folks just need cash. And maybe that will make some of the investments we're making as a government that much more efficient.
Sort of along those same lines, why is it so important that these payments have no strings, that they can spend it on whatever they want?
Because folks finances are so volatile that month to month needs change, right? And for example, for folks in current government programs, if you need money for food, that's probably not the only place where you need money. We know that 1 in 2 Americans already can't afford one $500 emergency. So it's really about providing people the contingency and the ability to use their mental acuity to make decisions, because month to month those needs may change.
These programs, the pilot programs, some of them use government money, some of them use private donations, some of them use grant money from foundations. If you were able to make this permanent across the country, how do you think it should be funded?
We are able to make this permanent across the country. And again, I think the child tax credit is a huge start, which is a guaranteed income, albeit for families with children. So state governments, county governments, local governments, we're doing pilots there because those governments can't deficit spend. They have to have a balanced budget every year. Our federal government can, and we do. We can also raise revenue. We can legalize cannabis nationwide and use the tax revenue for that to pay for guaranteed income. We could close the 2017 Trump tax cuts, which gave $2 trillion away to the richest among us. And we could close other tax loopholes and create a guaranteed income. There's no shortage of ways of paying for it. I really believe the question is, how do we build the wheel? How do we make it a necessity? It's a political question. We have to organize and demand of our elected officials that this is what we need, and let them know this is not scary. This is not an extreme position. This is not a utopian position. This is a position that Republicans and Democrats alike are both suffering. And that's where some of this anger we see, this raging populism we see, comes from economic anxiety in some ways. So this is not a partisan issue, which is a long answer to say it's a political question, but we've been doing the work to build political will, and we'll continue pushing until we get there.
Michael Tubbs, founder of Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.